Hey everyone, hope you've been doing well. So, today I want to talk about something that I can't believe it took me this long to talk about it, but it really seems like such an obvious issue. I watched a Gnostic antinatalist video yesterday about warning people, and we've both done this, warning people about how antinatalism will be taken over by psychopathic ideas. Right? I remember the first video I made about this was like within the first month that I started this channel. And I didn't realize how bad the situation was, even at the time that I was making it. And to me, it seems like the most obvious issue that leads people into feeding into these psychopathic ideas is the fear of death. I think that's also why I'm so comfortable being myself, because I wouldn't say I don't fear death. I would say I'm one with death, if that makes sense. I I mean, we're all dying as we speak right now, you know? But the the gap between dying and death is what people fear. And that's understandable, right? That's like deeply biologically rooted, right? No one like actually wants to go through the process of dying, you know? You could say maybe somebody's just that depressed or just that suicidal that, the process of dying might probably be relieving to them, but I doubt it. I doubt it. They're still going to have just as miserable of an experience as somebody who's not suicidal. So, if you listen to me, and I'll be making a lot more content like this from here onwards. If you listen to me, there's probably one thing I would want you to take away from anything I've ever said. Whether or not you think there's something after death, death, it's one of the forces of nature that I love the most, really. Simply because the fact that I don't hate humanity as much as I do rests in the fact that human beings die. Could you imagine if one of the British monarchs was still living for like another 200 years, right? Could you imagine if humans actually had those extended lifespans? I mean, with the current material conditions that we have right now, with how technology moves right now and its ability to improve people's lives, you might make an argument for wanting to live longer. I wouldn't. And it's just because, I can understand why people would worship death. But they're not worshiping death. They're worshiping mass death, right? That's the thing. That's right. I myself have to I've been learning to read between the lines more and more. They're not worshiping death. They're not in a death cult. They're in a mass death cult. They don't just want themselves to die. They want as many people as possible to die off with them, whether or not they want to admit it. And again, people always say, no one wants to die alone or whatever, right? That that in itself is ironically how natalists think. Because to them, whatever chaos they're involved in, dragging other people, especially children, into it it's how do I say it? It's of no great cost to them at all. They have this fantasy of being old and decrepit and dying in front of their four children and 12 grandchildren and I don't know, 5 great grandchildren or whatever, and it's so sickening how like they don't even realize the kind of trauma it causes. I have friends who have gone through that. Like literally their grandmothers have died in their arms. And they're not okay. They're just not. No one's gonna be okay after experiencing something like that. You won't. Begs the question how, you know, I see how trauma is such a driving force in this reality. And being able to truly resolve your traumas and find some sense of closure is incredibly difficult. And, you know, at least to me, the way I view antinatalism, I focused on, you know, exploitation and gruesome suffering, not just suffering, but like gruesome, wholly unnecessary suffering, right? I focus on how selectively empathic people are the worst. It's not psychopaths, it's not sociopaths. Yes, their ideas are the fucking worst, but it's these people with selective empathy who carry them out. You don't have like a gang of like 1,000 psychopaths doing all this sick shit. You might have like maybe 10, 15, that might be a lot, psychopaths who are directing people, but those people have the capacity to introspect. They have the capacity for empathy. They have the capacity to actually stop and think about their decisions, but they don't. For whatever number of reasons, they don't. But what I really wanted to add to this discussion is trauma, right? Trauma as a concept by itself should be enough of a reason for you to never want to have children. Because I would love to find a natalist that would argue me down about how trauma is good for their child. Their child will experience some level of trauma. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Vast majority of children will, you know, or they just believe that theirs are going to be the special snowflakes, right? It's trauma and exploitation, to me, that really drives antinatalism above everything, above all the rhetoric, above all the philosophy, above all the back and forth arguments. To me, those are 2 points I will never budge on because they're just plain to see. They're plain to see, but again, people are just too self-absorbed to actually be cognizant of it and try and do anything about it. And on top of that trauma, we have the fear of death. The fear of death. I don't want to say the fear of, I guess you could say the fear of non-existence. But again, the way this train of thought is going, it's not non-existence. It's not really... they say that they're worshiping the void. They're, you know, craving for the great nothingness and whatever. You know, whatever the case is. But they're not just doing it on their own. They want it... where they're being led to, let me say, where they're being led to is a place where they are just fully convinced that not only do they want to go to the black void, but everyone else must be there as well. You know, to save humanity, I guess. I don't know. Regardless. To me, death is your friend. Death is the most indifferent, but also the most... It's truly death that is right by your side, you know? For however many definitions you have of life or living or enjoying life, death will always be there. And death, you know, however somebody might go through a traumatic death, I'm not trying to like say that's a beautiful thing. Of course not, right? Trauma is trauma, and it's horrific that we have to come here and see people that we love and care about die in gruesome ways, and then just pretend and be like, oh yeah, but that won't happen to my kids, that won't happen to that won't happen to me, right? It's the fact that people have sold this fear of death from generation to generation to generation that, to me, I see all this metaverse talk and brain chips and all this kind of stuff. I see it as a means of, it's like the final stage of the fear of death to me. Because what worries me about this is, right now, every account you've ever had on social media is not actually gone. These social media companies still have them. Every single one. Even if you're not on there, they'll still find a way through some third-party app to get your information. They can even get your face. Deep faking is becoming incredibly common now, right? If a government agency really hated you, they could just put your face on somebody else's face when they're doing a fucked up crime, and you'd have no justification for it. Maybe you could be like, I wasn't there, but clearly you're there, you're on the camera, right? And it's just getting to a point where, and there's been plenty of movies and series about uploading your consciousness to the metaverse, right? And to me, I really wonder, these people who worship the black void, would they allow their minds, sentient souls, whatever, to be uploaded to the coming metaverse, right? Or in doing that, let's say in doing that, it's sort of like a physical death, but they can live in the metaverse, right? I don't really think so. I'm just arguing with myself right now. But we can say that the problem itself is life, right? Or we could say that the problem is how basically how excruciating it is for most people. For most of the people who make life livable for like a small fraction of humanity, it's quite fucking miserable, like astonishingly miserable. Like, you just have to find a way to keep on moving forward, knowing what you know. And because we're just growing ever so informed about pretty much everything, and we have access to so much information, people are just shutting themselves down. They're just drugging themselves up, and a drug can be anything, really. It can even be the YouTube content you watch all the time, and it consumes your day, right? Or it consumes your mind. And it just seems to me like we're getting to a stage where people won't even be worshiping death. See, that's the crazy thing, right? You're not actually worshiping death. You're worshiping whatever entity you think will give you that death. And maybe I'm just talking in too philosophical of a manner, but you could call it death, destruction, erasure, maybe. Whatever the case. What we know as death, right? What you know as death, right? It's not going to set you free in the way you think it's going to set you free, because again, really, really sit down and think about this. And this isn't to fearmonger, right? If this reality as we're alive, as we can perceive it right now, is so fucked up, what makes you think that turning off the switch is going to be the great release? What makes you think that, there was like this escape route and it was just death, and then the system is just like, oh, guess they're dead, we can't get to them now? I'm not trying to say like, fire and brimstone. I don't believe in any of that shit. That is obviously a control mechanism. But whatever happens in this reality, it really takes a lot of just understanding and deconstructing and exposure to really accept that maybe there's more, right? Me personally, I don't, I could have died today. I could have died a week ago. I could have died 7 years ago. Maybe I'm dead now. Maybe we're all dead now, Maybe we're all dead now and we don't even know. How would it make sense to worship the thing that's already, I wouldn't say planned, but it's already in our line of vision, right? How would it make sense to worship that? It's literally like worshiping a fucking TV. Like you've never seen a TV in your life and you're like, wow, look at the images, It's going to take people down a terrible road. And the worst part is, these are not trends that are isolated to antinatalism. You can go online and see how people talk about their whatever their political leanings are and what their solutions are. And it really doesn't get anywhere. Like again, the far right is here talking about genocide and ethnic cleansing, but they've dressed it up in 21st century language, right? That's what they're still talking about that shit, right? They're still carrying it out as we speak. That in itself, Nazi mass shooters are the red button philosophy in itself. They are in a death cult. Nazism is a fucking death cult, by the way. I'm not trying to say that people who worship this black void are Nazis. No. But Nazism is a death cult. And if it is a death cult, look at why it's a death cult. This is even going to just lead to my next video, because I really just want people to understand that we really don't, the act of worship in itself, to me, it's something I haven't been able to do for a long time, at the point where I realized so many of these religions, they need human beings. They need human beings to worship them. God needs human beings. Yahweh, Allah, you name it, Krishna, they all need human beings. We don't need them. They need us. If they don't need us, why else would they create us? If they really did. Most of these entities that have existed throughout human religions are just representations of the people who are around them and the people who wanted to consolidate power around them in whatever ways they had. But even if you just take the ideologies as they are, the religions as they are, you will see that they need humans. They need human energy. And most of all, they need human blood. It's one thing to talk about death as the great escape and the great, the great salvation, without realizing how the hell you're going to get there or what it's going to take to get there. But trust me when I say, plenty of people across history have tried and enacted that very same thought. So if you're really in a if you're really seeing death as this great hope or great sense of relief, just ask yourself first, do I accept death? Have I accepted death? That's simple. Have I actually just accepted that, yes, I'm going to die? Because if you haven't accepted it, then you've put it on a pedestal to say that it's the great escape, you know?